Good morning, everybody. Or for the second time, since we just had Tom Tiffany on, I am being joined today for DrydenWire.com. I'm Ben Dryden. And Americans for Prosperity, Wisconsin State Director, hopefully I didn't butcher that, Eric Bott is joining us to discuss this morning's breaking news that the Wisconsin's leading education, policy, and advocacy organizations have announced the formation of what they're calling an unprecedented coalition to empower parents and expand educational opportunities for students. That is a mouthful. I had a chance to kind of skim through it here this morning, but I haven't had a chance to actually digest any of it. Thankfully, Eric is coming on this morning to kind of walk us through it. Eric, good morning.
Good morning, Ben. Thanks for having me join you.
Yeah, it's been a minute, right? I think you were on like 3 months ago or so, and I've been trying to get you back on because I enjoyed our chat so much last time, and this is like perfect timing because of what had just came out this morning. But before that, how have you been? What have you been up to?
I've been great. Did some great traveling with my family, my young 3 boys and my wife this summer. And now it's, as every parent knows, it's fall sports season. So it's adjusting to the new schedule of how do we manage to drive 3 boys to, 6 different places in an evening and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah. And you were just up in our area not long ago, I thought I saw, because I follow you on Twitter, and I thought you were up here. I don't remember what you're doing up here, but I saw that you were up in northwest Wisconsin recently. Getting you fishing or, I don't know, hunting, hiking. You like all that junk.
Man, I was up there for work, Ben. I stayed overnight in Hayward. I got up at like 5:45 a.m. to try to go fishing because my hotel backed up to a lake. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to throw, cast a couple. And I got out on the dock, and 3 seconds later, it wasn't like a drizzle or a rainstorm. Sheets of water fell upon me.
Oh, snap.
So my plans to go fishing were ruined. On the plus side, I made it over to Park Falls and visited St. Croix Rods, which is always an awesome place to visit if you're in the area. It's an awesome company, and I'm kind of a homer when it comes to my fishing equipment. So if I can buy local, I do.
How often? I mean, your job is. This is what I'm told by people who know you. You have a very demanding job. And my understanding would be you rarely get a chance to go out and fish.
I got to make time. I typically keep a rod in my car so that if I'm in between meetings and have like 15 minutes and I see a cool ditch, I can go check and see. So, I find ways to enjoy myself, and frankly, I find fishing to be a wonderful time for contemplation, and I can think about work in a more relaxed environment and make some decisions and that sort of thing. So it's fun, but it is helpful.
When you go fishing. And you're not on to talk about fishing, but I just have a question because I don't fish. When you go fishing, do you turn your phone off, or because of your job, like I have to have it on? Because I feel like that'd be contradictory to what fishing is supposed to be, or at least that's what I understood it to be, which is total relaxation and just kind of check out from life. But can you do that, or no? I get phone calls and get my Bluetooth in, and I'm just casting and doing meetings.
I try to turn my phone off, but Ben, I'm kind of cursed. So I'll tell you a story. A couple of years ago, I went on a big fishing trip with a bunch of my best friends. We were in Taylor County on a small lake there, and we were looking forward to a good day of just relaxing and checking out from our jobs, right? It was the day that Congressman Sean Duffy announced that he was going to be retiring from Congress. So in the business, and I was on a boat with one of the guys that immediately the media started saying might be running. And so immediately, I'm like, I got to turn the phone back on, and it's going all day long. Thankfully, we got Congressman Tiffany out of that deal, and he's doing a terrific job. I was glad you had him on this morning. But yeah, that sort of thing seems to happen to me when I plan a day fully away from the job. Something in the political universe just like catches fire, and I got to turn the phone back on.
Yeah, it always works that way. I can speak to that as well. There's sometimes I just got to shut down, and then even for like 3 hours. And then I'll turn it back on, and there's fatal crash, and then this just broke. And I'm like, man, shoot. It always happens when you turn everything off. You can't do it. Anyway, so the Wisconsin Coalition for Education Freedom, I guess this is a new thing. We just posted it this morning at 8 o'clock. The headline was, Influential Wisconsin Groups Launch Coalition for Educational Freedom. AFP is a part of, I think there's 7 coalition partners in here. So obviously you can speak to that. For the people who don't know what that is, and again, I really haven't a chance to go through all of it myself, even the release on all that information. First, what is Wisconsin Coalition for Education Freedom, and how did that come to be?
You bet. So Over the years in Wisconsin, we've had a number of wonderful education reform groups like the American Federation for Children, School Choice Wisconsin, that have worked in niche spaces. They've worked to achieve funding for certain types of private schools, to provide more parental options, parental choices to parents, particularly low-income parents in the inner cities of Milwaukee and Racine, and now outstate, those types of things. And we've also had business groups like Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce, and grassroots organizations like Americans for Prosperity that have always dabbled in education policy. We work on it around the edges. We all have our unique niche interests in education. And we've realized both two things are happening right now in Wisconsin, and one is sad and one is really optimistic. There are serious problems occurring, particularly in public education in Wisconsin, and these problems are accelerating rapidly over the last 2, 3, 4 years. And there's sort of a sea change in the idea in sort of the heads of parents, where they're getting more involved and they're more interested in what's happening in schools, and they're looking to improve things. And so we're seeing unique challenges from all our different standpoints, and we're seeing these huge opportunities. And so we spent much of the spring and summer coming together and saying, where can we all get on the same page? Can we unite around some common principles and then develop a robust policy agenda for the state legislature when they come back in next January? And it turns out we have a lot of viewpoints in common, a lot of shared principles. We identified the same problems. And what it all comes down to really is I think going to be a package of really exciting reforms that seek to do one thing: empower parents. And that's what we all could come around. We all believe that parents need to have more of a say in their children's education, more involvement. We want to find ways to encourage that and to allow for it. So we now have this unified force that includes, brilliant legal minds like the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, these great, education experts like School Choice Wisconsin, and then, the biggest business organization in the state, Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce, our state chamber of commerce. When you pull us all together, we've got a lot of oomph, we've got a lot of expertise, we've got a lot of members we can turn to for ideas and knowledge. And I think coming out of this formal announcement, this unification of all of us, are going to be some tremendous ideas to transform education for the better.
So let's look at a real life situation, or at least, well, maybe just an analogy, I guess. Right now, for example, I'm a parent. I'm assuming I have choices. Our kids go to public school. We've never looked at really anything else. What are you hearing right now, or what would be this coalition? What would my options be if this all came to be and legislation gets passed? So in a year from now, going into the school year of next year, what's different? I mean, for just the average person or a parent. Okay, so what exactly are you going to be doing? Just having
Sure.
conversations with people or introducing laws and bills? And if so, what does this look like?
Yeah, it's going to be a combination of both. On the grassroots side, we hope at AFP to work with parents to help them get more involved in their local school boards and to teach them about education policy, to help them prepare to run for school board if they're interested. But as a broad coalition, we're really interested in crafting policies that solve some of the problems in education. And let me give you a story. Some close family friends of ours, we've got 3 little boys. We've got some friends that have 3 kids about the same age. One of their daughters suffers from dyslexia. And prior to COVID, she was able to do very well in school despite the challenges that disorder brings. But during COVID, when schools were closed and everyone was put on this sort of virtual education system that was problematic, some kids didn't even have that. She started to fall behind. And one day she said to her dad, my friend told me, it broke his heart. She said, "I don't think school is right for me. I just know that I'm good at it." And think about it as a parent, when you have a child who up until now has loved school, has done a very nice job, and they bring that to you, right? What do you do? And so in their case, because of their economic situation, they didn't qualify for Wisconsin's existing parental choice programs. But they were able to stretch their budget and pull some strings and figure it out and get their daughter moved from our local public school, which is a great school, into the local Catholic school, St. John's, which provided that level of in-person instruction that their daughter needed so that she could once again excel in school. So they were fortunate, right? They are in an economic situation. It's tough. It cost them some extra bucks, but they made it. They got it done for their daughter. There are thousands of Wisconsin families that had similar situations, particularly over the last 3 years, that don't have the economic means to provide their child with the best educational option for them. We want to change that. We want equity. We want every parent to be as empowered as possible to send their child to the type of school or provide the type of education that they think meets their needs for that child in the moment. And so we're going to work on, expanding these existing programs that by and large today support very low income families to support, let's support middle class families. Let's empower everyone. Let's give everyone the best chance to give the best education possible for their child. So that's the type of thing that we're looking at. How
So,
can we give every kid the best chance at a great life?
it sounds like some of this is like a private school. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? I mean, is it if you think public schools for your child, perfect, or
Yeah.
there are alternatives to that. This is kind of looking at to how can we have, from a financial standpoint, help out people who want to have their child, if they believe their child would be better served or better off in I don't know if it's referred to as an alternative school, but not public school, that this would help that. Is that correct?
That's part of it.
Okay.
I think we also want to help our public schools. We really need to seek to innovate and to reform, and I think a lot of that can be improved through greater parental involvement and the legislature breaking down some barriers that might be holding back public schools from innovating. And frankly, we have to. Ben, I always have to preface this when I share some of these statistics because they're really unbelievable. But I'm going to tell you these are legit. Um, I'm pulling these from the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. They have an amazing website. If you go to will-law.org, you can look this up for yourself. You can check on all sorts of cool information about your own local school district, as well as what I'm about to talk about with the Milwaukee Public Schools. And Will pulls this data directly from the government. It's all legit. Okay. So having said that, Ben, can you guess what the level of reading proficiency is in the Milwaukee public school system today?
I
How
don't
many
know what
kids,
like an average is.
like how many kids can read at grade level? Basic expectations
For what grade? Well, for any grade.
for any grade. At
Well,
what percent?
for just basic rate, I would like to. I have no idea. 95%.
Seven.
Seven.
7% of students in the Milwaukee Public School District are reading proficiently at grade level. 7%. Math is 4%.
That can't be right. No, and I'm not saying that like, oh my goodness, because I always try to make our guests look good, and I always try to be the dumb one, which is very easy role for me to play. But that can't. I mean, seriously. I mean, I thought come on.
It's that bad. And this is where, we have the situation, some of our school systems have deteriorated so much, and that has accelerated rapidly over the last 4 years. Proficiency in Milwaukee for English language arts has dropped 60% over the last 4 years. It's dropped 73% for math. Something is wrong in a lot of our schools. Not in all of them. We have some of the greatest public schools in the country in the state, but they're not equal. And so some kids are being left behind. And it's not necessarily a dollar figure. We saw this week Governor Evers announced a huge package to spend lots of additional resources on public schools. But if you look at the fine print, I fear it's not going to get into the classroom. It's not going to be focused on students and focused on teachers, but rather ever greater new bureaucratic programs, larger administrations, all that sort of thing that we've been seeing as a trend in public education, especially in the larger school districts in the state. And if you look at Milwaukee today, I just shared those statistics as how dismal the situation is, unfortunately, in that public school system. We're spending more there than anywhere else in the state, just about. We spend about $16,000 per student in the Milwaukee public school system. The state average is about $14,000, and we're one of the higher spending states in the whole country. We're in the top 20. So I don't think it's a resource problem necessarily, certainly not across the board, and certainly not in Milwaukee. Something else is broken, and we have to get at that. And I can show you what good looks like. Okay, in Milwaukee, one of the most beautiful stories that's now become a tragedy, and I'll get to that, is in education over the last decade, is a place called Hope Christian. Hope Christian opened up as a private school to serve children from one of the most challenging zip codes in the city of Milwaukee, very high crime rates, high rates of single family households, very challenging economic situations. They were serving kids who had the deck was stacked against them, right? These children are born into a situation where it's going to be very hard for them to succeed, not due to no fault of their own. But Hope Christian opened up to serve these kids, and within a short order of years, they achieved a 100% graduation rate and were able to place 100% of their students into either a 2-year school, a technical school, or a full 4-year college. It's an amazing story of success where through the right style of education, you can help kids in any situation achieve success and have a shot at the American dream. But here's the tragedy of it all. Schools like Hope Christian receive some funding from the state, but it's inequitable. I just said Milwaukee Public Schools receive about $16,000 per student. A large portion of that comes from taxpayers like you and me all over the state. Hope Christian and schools like it receive about $8,500. They're getting $8,500. MPS, Milwaukee Public Schools, again about $16,000. Due to that inequity, in January, Hope Christian, one of the greatest success stories in education in Wisconsin in recent years, announced they're going to have to close their doors in this coming school year. That is just a tragedy to me. Think about how many kids in Milwaukee who would have had a real shot at a great life, a great career, a great future, a great education, if Hope Christian had been able to stay open, may not have that now. That is a tragedy. We need to address that. And so part of this is, what's working in these schools that are so successful? How can we alter the way that some of these failing public schools are operating to help them improve, to help them out? And then also, can we get at this? Can we create more equity in the state? Can we help fund these highly successful schools that are serving these underprivileged and underserved communities? I think we need to. I think that would be a wise investment for all of us.
So it's $8,500 for Hope Christian and $16,000. We're just talking about the Milwaukee Public School District right now. If the other $7,500 was matched or was there or available, let's say it was both of them $16,000, would Hope Christian be closing their doors?
I don't think they would be. I can't say for certain, but I don't think they would be. And here's the cooler thing. I think if we can increase that, if we can create greater equity between the state's program that funds largely low-income students at private schools and what we fund in the public school system, it's going to create hundreds of more Hope Christians. You're going to create a market where entrepreneurs and innovators and parents can join together. Churches can come together with their congregations and say, the numbers work now. We can form our own school. We can do this and provide brand new educational options to students like all over Wisconsin. I think that would be beautiful. And if we are successful in this sort of thing, these concepts I'm sharing, we could be looking back in 10 or 15 years and going, oh my gosh, like Wisconsin is leading the country. Like we're ahead of the pack in terms of quality of education and diversity of options.
So I want to get to why aren't we kind of doing that right now? And forgive my ignorance, but like what is the pushback right now for why aren't we doing more for private or alternate schools? Different options? Is it because there's a fear that it's going to take away from public education somehow, and that makes that kind of worse? But before that, those numbers that you had shared reading in math at the really like single-digit numbers, what was that compared to like pre-COVID? And could that really kind of be looked at as, well, that's a part of it? Like they were at like 70%, then COVID happened, and then all the schools and all the stuff and all the remote learning, yeah, that kind of just dropped everybody down, but we think we can bounce back from that. How much of a role did that play?
So COVID was definitely a factor, but I think there's a good question that we have to ask ourselves. How much was the disease itself and how much was it a failed government response to the disease? But even prior to COVID, the numbers were pretty dismal. I mean, we've gone, we're in the single digits, but we're only in the low double digits prior to COVID.
Okay.
It was bad before, and COVID has accelerated
Sure.
into problems that already existed.
Okay. So what is why aren't we doing some of these things right now? Why do we have a Hope Christian who looks like we're having great success there? Based on everything you've said, it sounds great, but now they can't keep going. So why aren't we kind of doing that right now?
It feels like a no-brainer, but now, so you asked me that question, now I have to get cynical. Here's the reality of it. One of the most powerful and influential groups in left of center politics is in Wisconsin, WEAC. It's the State Teachers Union. And they have, their stated policies going back for years is a one-size-fits-all education. All students should be forced into their local public school. All public school teachers should be unionized, period. No exceptions. And they are the largest, or in the top 2 or 3 most influential organizations with the Democratic Party and with left of center organizations in the state of Wisconsin. They're the 800-pound gorilla in left wing politics, and so they have a very dogmatic and ideological view on these things. And I would say does not put children first. Um, it puts their members first, right? And that's their job as a union, is to put their members first, their leadership first. But it doesn't serve our children. And so we've faced over the years, as we've slowly, gradually rolled out these innovative programs in Wisconsin, and that goes back to 1990. Our statewide school, or our Milwaukee school choice program's 32 years old now, which is wonderful. It's the oldest in the country. They've steadily fought it, and so it's been gaining ground by inches in terms of education reform in Wisconsin. Sure. And so it's a sad thing from my perspective that these issues in our state are so divisive and so partisan. But I think that has to do with, frankly, on one side of the aisle, one side of the political spectrum, there's a very powerful, important group that provides a lot of campaign resources, a lot of support to certain politicians, and they're very dogmatic and very dug in on their perspective on these types of reforms.
Is Act 10 still being a factor in anything? And to be honest, this was before I started DrydenWire, and so I really didn't pay that much attention to it. But is that from someone that is maybe a little skeptical about this, saying, well, you know what? If Act 10 didn't happen, we wouldn't be having these problems to begin with. So now it's like you created a problem and you're trying to fix it. There could be some people who actually think that. How would you respond to that?
So, what Act 10 really did was equip school districts with a lot of tools and flexibility in how they manage themselves. And so school districts that took advantage of the new flexibility within Act 10, things like, check this crazy idea out, merit pay for great teachers. We should pay the best teachers a lot of money. I think that's an awesome idea.
Yeah.
I pretty much want to pay all teachers more, because I think they're incredibly important in our lives and lives of our children. But we should be, we should be rewarding and compensating outstanding achievement by the best teachers. That wasn't a thing that you could do before Act 10, really. Post Act 10, that is an option that school districts have. And so school districts that have taken advantage of it have been able to really improve the quality of their teaching staff, which is cool. You'll hear other school districts maybe complain about that because they maybe lost teachers and they weren't willing to utilize those tools to keep them. So it's a mixed bag. But when you look at a school district like Milwaukee Public School System, or the Madison Public School System, or Green Bay, where we really see huge problems, huge gaps in reading proficiency, math proficiency, all the rest. These are school districts that, by and large, chose not to take advantage of the reforms. And if you look at school districts in other parts of the state that are doing really well and serving parents and students exceptionally well, they, by and large, have. And so I think we continue to see a lot of outstanding outcomes from Act 10. And we continue to see where schools that maybe were ideologically opposed to the reforms for whatever reason and didn't take advantage of them, they're really struggling right now.
Sure. In this release that was sent this morning that we published on our website at DrydenWire.com, it says the coalition plans to develop a comprehensive education agenda that policymakers can enact in the upcoming legislative session. So this is really an announcement of the coalition existing and what we're kind of looking at doing, but there really hasn't been anything yet. So what is kind of the next? I mean, the next legislative session is coming up here pretty quick. Obviously, what are we in September? In just a few months. So You're hoping to have something, whether it's Michaels or Evers or someone that you can then present and say this is what it is, or to our lawmakers that we've done all this. So what's next for you? Where do you guys go? Is it all right? We announced this, and then all right, whatever. I mean, clearly you now have to gather a lot of information. I think in here it even talked about talking to parents. I mean, how are you going to talk to parents? Are there going to be surveys? Is it one-on-one? What's next for this coalition?
Yeah, one of the things that's so exciting about the coalition is the diversity of it. So, the State Chamber of Commerce can survey its business members and find out, what do we need to do in education maybe to better prepare students to have options to enter tech and the STEM fields and go that route so they can fit the jobs that we have and make a great living. For us, we have this great grassroots infrastructure. And so we're holding a huge educational event over in Milwaukee this Saturday, where we're going to have parents and superintendents and school leaders from the community come in and talk about these things. We have groups like School Choice Wisconsin that has something like, maybe I'm getting this wrong, but I think it's like 350 members. It's a huge number of private schools, and they're going to talk to all those superintendents and the families that run those schools, and gather feedback on what are the most crucial things to address. And already we've started this process. School Choice Wisconsin Action polled 2 weeks ago, and the survey they got back is really interesting. The top issue that parents were most interested in was transparency. Left, right, and center believe it or not, almost all parents would like the ability to know what the curriculum is in their school. They kind of want to know what their kids are learning. And surprisingly, in some school districts, that's really difficult to obtain that information.
Bizarre.
Yeah, it's weird. But yeah, parents want to know what their kids are learning.
Yeah.
Shocker.
Yeah,
Right?
jeepers.
There was legislation last year that would have created a basic statewide framework for school districts to provide, simple curriculum information to parents so they know what's going on in the classroom. Governor Evers vetoed that legislation, which I don't understand, but I think it's pretty common sense stuff. But that's the type of thing, we're going to come back now in force and try to push reforms like this that just makes sense. And that, 60, 70, 80% of Wisconsinites go, yeah, that's a no-brainer. You should be doing that.
Yeah. Where can people go to find out more about this? Is there a website? I haven't seen one yet, but I'm sure there is.
I don't think we've launched a coalition website yet. We just
Okay.
put out the formal announcement today, but you can find information, at any of the coalition members. And certainly if you just Google the Wisconsin Coalition for Education Freedom, you're going to find the stories today. There'll be a story in the state journal. And most of us are starting to post stuff on our own individual websites.
Well, thank you for coming on. Do you have a few more minutes? I want to ask you just some, as long as you're on, some politics stuff. Yeah. So when you were on about 3 months ago, we talked about the primary and the race and et cetera. That's kind of old news now. We are at September 8th. I think it's 2 months from today. Well, not from today, but 60 days away from the November election. What are you looking forward to the most? What are you hearing? What are you seeing right now, Republican or Democrat, certain races? Is there anything right now that you're looking at and really paying attention to or following or finding really interesting?
Well, I'll tell you, Wisconsin is like the purplest of states, right? Like we're so, I don't know if say evenly divided or just that, we have, we've got a lot of people that kind of bounce around in their political positions, but that's shaping up today. I think we're going to have some nail-biter elections this fall. There have been a number of polls released in the last week. Trafalgar, which is a newer pollster, but has been the most accurate.
I've heard that.
Yeah, they've been really good in Wisconsin in particular. 16, 18, 20, they were the most on point with projecting the elections. They just released a poll about 10 days ago or so. It had the governor's race tied at 48, like deadlock, dead even tie.
Wow.
So our coalition, School Choice Wisconsin Action, they released a poll on Thursday. They had it at 48 Evers, 47.5 Michaels. So we're really close, right? It's going to be a nail biter of an election. And on the gubernatorial front, on the U.S. Senate front, most of the polls right now are showing Mandela Barnes as being 2 or 3 points ahead of U.S. Senator Ron Johnson. And I think what we're seeing in that race, and what you're going to see over the next month, that's interesting, maybe off-putting to some people, is a race to define Mandela Barnes. So most people know what Ron Johnson is all about at this point. But Mandela Barnes, he's been a lieutenant governor. He was a state assemblyman before that. A lot of people still don't know who he is. More than a third of voters don't have an opinion on him yet. He is governed as lieutenant governor and as an assemblyman as sort of an AOC progressive neo-socialist, very far left. He's trying to rebrand himself as quickly as he can as a moderate. So if you see all the ads for Mandela Barnes, he says, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm a very moderate guy. And then you see Ron Johnson or groups that are supporting him, like Americans for Prosperity Action. We're kind of in a race to define him, frankly, as what I believe he is, which is this very far left radical that he's governed as his entire adult life where he's been in government. And so that's the race. And whoever wins that race to define, who Mandela Barnes actually is or who he's trying to find himself as this new, different, moderate person, that is probably going to determine who wins that.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? So we have Republicans on, we have Democrats on, or candidates running as either. And I notice a lot that Republicans, it seems as though, and I'm not saying this is good or bad, it is what it is. It's not my opinion. This is what happens when they're on our shows. Is Republicans are this is exactly where I stand and what I feel. And if you like it, great. If not, pound sand. Now, they don't say that, but they are very strong in their convictions. When typically, not all of them, but typically when Democrats are on, they really do kind of come across more as I'm a very moderate. And but you're not. And that's okay. Like, just own it. Like, I am far left, a liberal, that's fine. No problem at all. But why do you feel, or I'm sure you've seen this in other worlds, or maybe you don't see it, and maybe it's just our shows. Why does a Democrat, or maybe it's just a candidate running, maybe not a already elected Democrat, feel the need to kind of pull everything back a little bit, and I'm going to be, come across more as a moderate. Why do you think?
Well, part of it's philosophical. Part of it's just the nature of the parties are really different. Um, you know, Conservatives tend to prioritize a policy vision and really focus on that. Um, Progressives tend to prioritize power. So it's about achieving power in order to do the things that they want to do on the policy front, the legislative front. And so to get that power, you can adopt a more ends justify the means mentality, and you can kind of say what's necessary to get there. It's just a different viewpoint on how to govern, or what's the priority of governance or the purpose of governance. So is it, is the purpose of governance policy, or is it power? I think that's really what drives it. And then the other part of it is the progressive or left of center coalition is made up of a very large kind of disparate groups with disparate interests, and they all come together and kind of agree that they're going to do all these things. And some of those things might be kind of outside the political mainstream, but they kind of agree to it. And so then to sell that politically, you have to sort of temper the messaging. Whereas and sometimes this hurts Republicans politically, but they pretty much kind of all come around some big sets of issues, and it's we're all in or we're not, and they stick to them. So,
but like you were mentioning, Lieutenant Barnes running for Senate, Lieutenant Governor, he has a track record, and we can all see that, and he is what he is. But now he's trying to portray himself as not that. Why? Is it just, well, that's how you win an election? If it's just that, then okay, I get it. Fine. But it's just interesting because I don't see that from the other side. And I'm not saying like, hey, Republicans are great and Democrats suck. Not at all. It's just something I've observed, and I just find that really interesting. I don't see someone that is a Republican and far right be anything other than a Republican that's far right. They just they just own it.
I think it's just electability. And I mean, I'll give you an example. So Mandela, there's an organization called the Working Families Party. It's sort of a neo-socialist group, right? Yeah. It's what AOC, right? It's the far left. Mandela Barnes helped found it in Wisconsin. He worked with them for years. One of their big priorities has been to abolish ICE, which is part of our immigration enforcement system. Mandela Barnes, bragged. He worked for them for years, worked with them for years. He's, bragged holding up pictures of T-shirts saying abolish ICE. He now literally has a commercial on television and YouTube saying, I don't want to abolish ICE. That's a lie. It's crazy to me to see that, but that's precisely the type of thing that we're seeing from his candidacy. He spent his entire adult life working in and around these extremely far left institutions and organizations and within government, pushing these very radical positions. In the legislature, he authored the bill to fully, completely eliminate cash bail. Now he's running from that and telling people, I don't support any of that crazy stuff. So I think it's
just so bizarre to me.
It did some polling, and we're like, oh, this stuff's not popular in Wisconsin, so let's run away from it.
All right. Americans for Prosperity Wisconsin State Director Eric Bott was joining us today to kind of walk through a few things. Eric, is there anything that you want to discuss that we didn't get a chance to?
No, I appreciate the opportunity, Ben. It's fun to come on, especially the part talking about fishing, so we can do more of that.
Yeah, I have to learn how to fish. It can't be that tough. I did go deep sea fishing once, but I don't think that was the same thing. So I was 16. My brother was out in California, my older brother, and he bought this fishing package thing. So we go out off the coast of California, some Morocco Bay or something, and we're on this boat, and there's like 50 of us, and we're all just kind of standing around, and you have this pole, rod, a fishing, whatever it's called, and there's 5 hooks on it, and you got like a 1 or 2 pound weight at the bottom, and they just say, all right, drop your line. Like, you don't cast it or anything. You just drop it. It goes down, 100 or 200 feet. And then they say, all right, pull it up, and you pull it up, and then there's like 5 fish on it. Like, this is stupid. This isn't fishing. Like, this is so dumb. So that's like the extent of my fishing.
Well, someday I got to tell you my story about trying to go deep sea fishing in China and our boat getting commandeered by the People's Liberation Army.
We'll save that one for the next show. Next time you come on. I can't wait to hear that one.
I'll talk to you later, Ben. Thanks.
All right. See you, man. Thanks so much.